that I'm in the presenter mode here. So Erin already told you who I am. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the Matchmaker Exchange. So you heard a lot about how to classify variants and also how to define genes are or not, and mutations in the same gene or even the same mutation, the same variant. And that is how we started this group of databases by trying to connect databases that were facilitating this process of identifying these other patients. So the Matchmaker Exchange now has all these databases from different places in the world that are connected to each other. And if you go to one of these databases and you include there your patient, your gene of interest, you will be able to not only look inside that one database that you're using, but expand your search to the other databases that are located in other places in the world. And it will facilitate that process of finding other individuals, and hopefully it will help you to classify your gene or your variant as pathogenic or not to the disease that you are studying or investigating. So you can go to the matchmakerexchange.org website and you find more information about each one of these nodes. We call nodes each one of these databases, and you will see what they do and where they are located and what's the one that makes more sense to you. But wherever you create an account, from there you can access the others. And that's what we are going to kind of go through the exercise of doing today. Here is a table from the website telling you about the participants and how many genes each one of the participants has in the system. And you can see here, GMatch is the second one. It has 13,000 genes. And you can see each one of the others, what's the number of genes that they have, and also the location. I think that's very important to us to understand. Sometimes it's hard to people to use a database that's outside of their country because of IRB issues. So you can, depending on where you are, and if you have these restrictions, use something that is you are allowed to, because we have databases in many different places, not as many probably as we needed, but in many different places. We have Decipher from UK, GeneMatch, Seeker, and MyGene2 are in US, and you have IRD in Japan, Patient Matcher in Sweden, and Phenome Center in Canada, and RD Connect is more of a European, not so much one only country. So all these databases are connected to each other. Some of them not to all of each other, like all the others, but most of them to most of them. And you can send your case to these other data. What we are going to go here to GeneMatch, and we created GeneMatch almost 10 years ago. Actually, when I was preparing these slides, I realized that next year will be 10 years that we created GeneMatch. And it was as part of the Baylor Hopkins Center for Mendelian Genomics, a project that we had and that finished in November last year. But that the intent of this project was to sequence 1,000 exomes per year of patients with rare Mendelian phenotypes and try to identify the genes that were causing these diseases. As soon as we started this project, we felt the need to have a tool that would facilitate us to identify other patients that had a similar phenotype and mutations or variants in the same gene that we had as candidate. Because that was, we still think it is, the main evidence to prove that this gene is actually causative of a disease. If you can have a large number of patients with the same phenotype and variant in the same gene. The problem with rare disease is that when we talk many, how many can we find with a disease that is so rare? And also, like, if you have one in one country and one in another country, how you put them together? So that's when we decided that we were going to create GMatcher, and we wanted to make it as easy as possible to be used. So the only requirement to you to create a submission in GMatcher was to put the name of a gene that you are interested on. That made it easier to use, faster, and also less complex, and also less IRB requirements. And as soon as we created GeneMatcher, Phenome Center was also created in Canada, and the conversation started at that point about how to connect these databases so people didn't need to create an account in each one of these different databases to complete their search. They would go to one and from there to the others. So as of now, GeneMatcher is now connected to the Matchbox, the Decipher, RUD, Model Matcher, MyGene2, Patient Matcher, Phenome Center, and RD Connect. It's almost all the nodes that were in the list. And when you create a submission in GeneMatcher, you can choose where else you want to send your information to and what information you want to send. And here you have the choice to repeat that search every month in the databases that you selected, sending the information that you selected. And we will go through this process a little bit more, because I know that you did an investigation of a case yesterday and you came up with a novel disease gene candidate, and we will go through the process of how to submit that gene to GeneMatcher in a few minutes.
So Nara, we did get a question in the chat. You told me to interrupt you, so here we go. So Amaya's asking, so the resources linked to Matchmaker Exchange are not beacons, but only repositories of variants posted by users? If so, is it possible to link anyone's lab or project's beacon to Matchmaker Exchange?
So the way that each one of these nodes works is a little bit different. So you have to really know about the database that you want to connect to and go through the rules with them. But in general, you cannot go to most of these databases and make a search. For example, let me talk about GeneMatcher so I don't say anything that is wrong. In GeneMatcher, you cannot go to GeneMatcher and make a search. Say, is there anybody there with mutation or interest in gene X? You actually have to go to GeneMatcher, create your account, make a submission with the gene that you are interested on, and then once you do that, the database will match that submission to the other submissions in the database and let you know if there is a match or not. What clinical labs do is we have an automated process that they can submit monthly all these genes. Doesn't have to be one by one, and all the genes that they have monthly submitted to GeneMatcher are then sent around to the other submitters in GeneMatcher and to the other Matchmaker Exchange nodes also. So I don't know if I understood the question correctly, but if you are asking, can I just go there and make a search? No, you have to go there, create your account, create your submission, and then you get a match if there's a match in the database or not. So if I didn't understand the question correctly, please ask again on the chat. I'm happy to clarify it if I can. So here, these are the numbers of GeneMatcher as of April 1st. We have now 14,435 genes from 14,346 submitters in 98 countries. And of these 14,000 genes, 9,500 have matched. And these are 66% of the genes. Who uses GeneMatcher? So we have researchers, almost 9,000 of them are researchers. Almost 6,000 of them also describe themselves as healthcare providers. We have much lower number, but some patients, 764. And then the kind of researchers are they using? Are they working with human models, or are they using other model organisms? So we have here a breakdown of the genes. Of these 14,000 genes that we have in the database, 352 were submitted by model organism researchers. 206 of these genes are from mouse model, 64 from zebrafish, 47 from fruit fly, 21 from yeast, and 14 from other non-human organisms. I have to say, I think the first paper that acknowledged GMatch as a tool that facilitated the recognition of a novel disease gene was actually the match between a researcher that was investigating the phenotype on a mouse model and a clinician who had a patient with phenotype that matched. So we welcome patients, when we welcome model researchers, but there are also other tools that I want to make sure people know about that are more focused on these groups. So for the patients, I really like MyGene2. I think it's very focused on the patient use and it's very helpful for the patients. I always tell the patients that reach out to me to also try that. And for the model organism, we just connected last year, was just launched the model matcher tool. That is also very interesting, very fun to use, and I think very helpful. And we are also connected to them now. So it's another tool for individuals who are researching other non-human organisms to use in here. So what kind of genes are in GeneMatcher? What are we talking about putting in GeneMatcher? When we create a GeneMatcher, we made the point that we wanted GeneMatcher to be to novel disease genes. So we would say, like, put the gene that doesn't have an homing phenotype in there, because we want to see if we can find a phenotype for the genes that don't have a phenotype. But the reality is that there are many other genes that while they have a phenotype, you find a variant in your patient and the phenotype is not the same that is already known to be associated with that gene, but you still want to know if maybe this is a different phenotype associated with that gene. So I think many people use GeneMatch trying to find out if maybe the variant in that gene is causing a different phenotype than what's already known. And the truth is that we have, among the genes that are in GeneMatcher, 4,500 of them are associated with a phenotype, and 4,894 of them have never matched. So, okay, let me just stop here for a minute. Of these genes, 4,569 of them have a homing phenotype. So that is not the primary function of GeneMatcher. Like I said, we hope to find a novel disease associated with a gene that was not known to be a disease gene, but some people still use it. 31% of the genes in in GeneMatcher are still already associated with a homing phenotype. Then how many of these genes have matched or never matched? 4,800 of them have never matched. So a lot of genes that have been put in GeneMatcher just one time and never more. And of them, 3,297 are not homing disease genes that we know of. So there is still a lot of, someone thought that this gene is a good candidate, but can't find someone else with the mutation, the same variant, in the same gene, the variant, the same gene. And then we have many genes, 846 of them, almost 6%, that have been submitted more than 5 times. And 433 of them are not homing disease genes that we know yet. So that are genes that maybe are causing more than one phenotype, more complicated to find, or maybe just genes that are mutated in everybody and are not really causative of anything. But there's a paper that came out a few years ago actually showing that in death, it was from France, I think, from a lab in France, that actually in their experience, these genes that matched many times were the ones that they end up proving that were disease causing. So there is a fine line there between deciding if these genes are really causative or not. So these are the genes that are there as of now. And now I wanted to go through the exercise of putting that gene that you found yesterday in GeneMatcher. Any questions?
So Nara, yes, we did have a question about the numbers. So the number of 8,930 users, does that include those only primarily registered with GeneMatcher or also registered with Decipher? So that's the first question. And then there's another
Only
one.
GeneMatcher. These numbers are all GeneMatcher only.
Okay. And then the second part of the question is, does it work in both directions? So if I search Matchmaker Exchange today from Decipher or Seeker, and my search returns 0 match in GeneMatcher, will I automatically be notified if a new thing comes in a few months later, or you have to click that run monthly in order to get that?
That's very important. Yes, you have to click the run monthly. So when on the Matchmaker Exchange API that connects these nodes, when one node sends the information to the other node, the second node, the receiving node, doesn't store that information. So that's a one-time search. And this is why we created that tool in GeneMatcher that says repeat it monthly. And I don't know if all the other nodes have that choice or not, but if you don't have that choice, then it may be that the match is not there today and it will be in 6 months and you may miss it if you're not repeating it often or regularly. Okay? So that's important to note. All right, any other questions? Okay, so the case that Erin told me that we were going to use as a case here was the GT3. And when you go to GeneMatcher and you create an account and you click create a submission, that's what you're going to find first. And you put here the identification of your case. And if you are not the primary person that you want to be responsible for that entry, you can put other names here because the entry will be created with your name since it's your account, but you can add someone else for the account when the notifications are being made. Then you have the option to say if you're studying a human or any other model organism and what kind of disease you're studying. Is it a disease that has a name and you don't know what gene causes that disease, has a name and you know the gene, but the gene doesn't answer most of the cases, or is a disease that doesn't have a name? From what I gathered from the case years, that you don't have a name for that disease. You have patient with multiple features, congenital anomalies, but you don't have a name or a suggestion of a clinical suggestion for the diagnosis. So I put here, it's an unknown disorder. And the key features that I decided to take from what you had there were hearing loss, cleft palate, and developmental delay. We'll see that we will, actually there were many more features for this patient and we can put it in here, but this is just initially. And I don't know, but I assumed it was an isolated case. In here, you can actually pick a mode of inheritance that you think it's more likely if you have one in mind. If it's a consanguineous family and you really think it's homozygous, you can put it in here. But in that case, I just selected isolated case. And then you go to the family structure. You can put as much as little information about the family structure in here. I only put that the patient was a female and I came up with it. I was not sure it was. And you say that it's affected. And you have now if you say that the patient is affected, you have the option to say that you want to add features for this patient. It's not required, but we are actually now going to try to motivate people that are using GMatch to put more and more of the phenotypic features in here to be shared on the notification email. So far, we never made it required. We still are not going to make it required, but we want to really get people to know of this possibility and how it may help with the notification email and trying to figure out who you should follow up with or not. So, and here you put the information about your gene. You can put the gene and you can put a variant information also. And you can choose to match on the variant information also if you want. But usually what is mostly used for in GeneMatcher, it's like to match on the gene name. And you put the information about your variant, and that information that you put here is not used to match, but is shared on the email notification. So in that case, if you say that the variant is heterozygous, it's a missense, and if you have a mode of inheritance, it will all be shared on the email notification, even if it's not used to be matched. And here, when you click add features, that's what you come to. And you can just go to that box and start the feature that you want to add, and it will come up. You click in here and it comes in here. And here on the right side, I hope you're seeing my mouse. Do you see my mouse, Ari?
Yep.
Okay. So you can actually see the features that I was putting for this patient that I took from the information that I got. So if these features had come up as features of a specific disease in OMIM, so what the database does is the database picks these features and makes a search in OMIM based on these features. And if there is a suggestion of a diagnosis in OMIM, it is described here on that matching OMIM disorder box. In that case, it was true in a specific, all these features together, and no diagnosis came up. Okay, so now you put all the information that you wanted, and you are deciding on what you want to match. The gene symbol is the required one. Everything else is an option. You can do it if you want, you don't have to. But you can also match on the OMIM phenotype number if you have a disease that you want to be matching on. Genomic location is for the variant, and phenotypic features if you want to match on phenotypic features for that individual. Again, most of the people who use GMatcher, 99% use for the matching on the gene name. You can select if you don't want to match to a group of submitters. So if I am a clinician and I only want to match with researchers, I can say I don't want to match with other healthcare providers and I don't want to match with patients. I don't even know, I have to look at the numbers, but I think it's very few people have restricted their matches to any specific group. And then comes to that question that we just got. I'm going to submit my gene name. I don't have any restrictions. And I want to also match to all the Matchmaker Exchange. And I want to save it. And I want it to be rerun every month. And these are the ones that I chose to match to every month, now and every month. And this is the information that I chose to match on. So that's how you guarantee or ensure that you are actually going out of GMatcher. Because when you stay in GMatcher, unless you delete your account or your submission, it will always be matching as someone comes in. But if you don't do that part here, that search is not going out to the other nodes regularly. It's only one time, and this is it. If you send your email, you match. So I could not really do it on the Med 16 because I could not create an account and create a lot of like false positive matches. So what I did was I picked the email notification from another entry of mine, and this is how it looks like. In that case, it's saying that I had this entry in here, and it's telling me that a submission was made from that person, and it matched my submission on that gene here, and that's the information that I had for my gene in there. That person received the same information telling them that they have a match with that entry of mine, and the same way I got his email or her email notification information, they get mine. And now they can contact me or I can contact them, and we can get more information about the features of the patients or the kind of variant, the zygosity, and whatever else you have the information about the gene or the phenotype or the variant. That's why we want to add the phenotype information also. So if I match outside GeneMatcher to one of the other nodes like Matchbox or Phenome Central or MyGene2, I actually get the features that the individual in that database has on that email notification. And we want to add that here to GeneMatcher also. We just want to make sure that the submitter who created the account in GeneMatcher allows us to do it, because when we created GeneMatcher, we said, it's only gene name. We are not going to share anything else. You are the one who's responsible for sharing something else if you want when you communicate with each other. So we are working on changing that to make sure that we have the features in here. We think it's very helpful to have it in here to follow up of the emails. Do I really care about this email? Do I want to talk to this person about this patient? Is it the same phenotype or not? That being said, I will say many times the phenotype is not completely investigated, and it's always good to make sure that the other person investigated the feature that you're interested on that patient. So in GMatch, you can also have this tab at the beginning of the submission that's match report, and it will show you, and this is for this on my submission, so it's not the Match 16. It will show you here, if I click there, all the matches that I had to the genes that I submitted in that submission as candidates for that patient. And once I get the follow-up on that match, I can come here to waiting outcome report and update that and say, okay, I'm not waiting for the outcome report anymore. I know that's a phenotype match, or I actually had a publication on it. Or if it was not a match, I can say why it was not a match. So that's helpful for people who have many genes and want to know what's going on with that genes. And it's also helpful for us in the database to know what's going on with the genes that are in here. All right, so I just want to, in the last few minutes, talk about the other tool that we created that is not for gene specifically, but for the variant. But before I do that, any questions about GMatch and the use of GMatch and how it's used?
No other questions have come in the chat, but if we could just leave a minute or two for some final remarks, that would be great.
Yes. So variant matcher is more focused on the variants. And what we have here is a way to you to search. That's a search. You don't have to create an account and put your variant. You go in here and you check if this database has anybody with the variant that you're interested on. And you put your variant, you can put up to 10 per day. And you can put features. And if you put the features are going to be shared on the email notification. And you can save the search to be rerun every month if you want. So that's how it looks like if you save it. And as of now, in this database, we have 6,000 individuals that can be searched for variant that you are interested on. 746 submitters from 45 countries have created an account in Variant Matcher. 4,929 variants have been searched. 80 have matched to 901 individuals. It's also connected to Beacon. So you can come to Beacon, put the variant, and if the variant is in Variant Matcher, it will show up. And these are the numbers from the people who came through Beacon. Network, 9,000. We are now working together with Franklin and together with Gene2MP and MyGene2 to connect this database. They are all databases that do the same kind of search based on variant, to connect them the same way that the gene-based database are connected through the MME. We are trying to do the same thing now using a Global Alliance API that's called Search API, actually Data Connect API, that was just approved last year. And we are using that to connect the database. And then you can go from variant matcher to the others and vice versa. So with that, I want to thank everybody who has been working on this project with us. And you have 3 minutes for final remark, Clary.
Thank you so much.